Foundry, Wednesday, the 22nd of April. Here we are again. We are meeting this way because we don't have any choice. This is a good way to meet. I hope you haven't had a chance to look at last week because this is building off of last week. And I'm going to leave it up on the website, on our homepage, just in case, because the two of them really, I've taken this and separated into two because there's so much information. And it can get a little hard to understand unless you keep that in mind. So instead of trying to go back and recap, which is way too much stuff to do that, go back and listen to it. Take you about 25 minutes, I think it was, something like that. I'm going to try to be a little quicker tonight. You know, that doesn't always work, but I'm going to try. Remember, we started out with a syllogism, which was a series of statements that where A equals B, and if A equals, let's see, how does it work? If A equals B and B equals C, then A also equals C. That's basically the idea. And so we said, whatever begins to exist has a cause. That's the first statement. Remember, the statement has to be logical and it is provable. Whatever begins to exist has a cause. And we started that last week. And then the universe began to exist. And we showed ways and why we believe scientifically that, and also from biblically, but especially scientifically, why we believe that that's a true statement. So the first statement is, whatever begins to exist has a cause. We proved that. The second one is the universe began to exist. And then the third statement was, therefore, the universe has a cause. And I think that's where we left off last week. So you got those first two. And if those first two are correct, and we tried to prove to you as best we could why we believe that the first two are correct, then the last one is a logical conclusion of that. Therefore, the universe has a cause. Now, I'm going to be looking at my notes quite a bit tonight because I don't want to miss anything. There's a lot of stuff in here. But this is a critical last conclusion, that the universe has a cause. If it has no cause, then it is random and meaningless. And what we do has no bearing whatsoever. Because eventually, even if it's 90 million years from now, the sun will go out and everything will die. Which means we had no purpose, no meaning, no cause. There was nothing about our existence that had real meaning. Because to have meaning implies that it goes beyond our life. But if all our life ends in nothingness, then that goes back to a life that lives in nothingness. Do you understand? But we believe that there is something that gives us a cause to this universe. And if there is a cause, then there is a causer, someone who makes this world meaningful. So there's a few arguments about the existence of God. This is where we are. We're talking about, do we believe that God exists and why? So one of them is called the Finetuning Argument. The Finetuning Argument. Now, imagine this. If I went on a hike in the mountains, in a remote part of the world, and I'm walking, I'm trampling up here, nothing exists up here but mountains, and I'm going up there, and all of a sudden I see a cabin, beautifully built. And I open the door, and inside it says, "Welcome, Larry." And inside is the perfect temperature. Everything that I wanted to eat as my favorite was there. All the things that the clothes that was in the dressing room was exactly my size. Everything was just for me, and there was a note on there. "I hope you have a great stay here, Larry." I'd never been there before. What would be your conclusion? Was it an accident? Did debris and rocks and enough storms and upheavals in the land cause this cabin to be built? Well, that would be crazy enough. But how does it have the right temperature inside? How does it have food that I like and clothes that fit me, and then a message that says, hey, this is all for you, have a great time? You would conclude, would you not, that if you saw this kind of a cabin in a remote, unexplored area, that someone went before me and did this knowing who I was and what I needed. And this is the fine-tuning argument. In the 20th century, many scientists discovered that there were multiple physical laws that had to be just right. You know what this sounds like? In fact, this is another name for it, called the Goldilocks Effect. You remember the old story of Goldilocks and the bear, the three bears, where Goldilocks goes in and she doesn't like the soup because it's too hot, didn't like it it's too cold, and then she finds it's just right. Didn't like the bed too hard, too soft, just right. And so they call this the Goldilocks Effect. When you look at this world, laws had to be exactly, precisely within a very narrow constraint of results in order for us to exist. For example, just one law, gravity. What goes up must come down. And if the gravitational constant were a little weaker, then stars and planets would never have been formed. Life would be impossible. Things that are rotating around would not rotate. If we're a little stronger, the Big Bang, when that explosion took place and we believe that God caused it, it would have fallen back on itself because gravity would have been too strong. Too weak, it just flies away. Too strong, it goes back in itself and gives another Big Bang. And again, there would be no life to form. So there are three possible explanations that those who do not believe in God would say, okay, what about necessity, chance? Well, there's a third one that's a problem with those that do not believe God, and that's what we believe is design. Necessity, chance, and design. Necessity, did the constants of nature absolutely have to be the values that were? There's no reason to say it had to be this way. The way the world, the way the universe started, it had to be that way. Constants are so different, laws of nature are so different, and so complex, there's no way that it has to be on its own to be this way. The second one is chance. This is what most atheists or agnostics would say, that life is a matter of time plus chance plus matter. Time plus matter plus chance, I think is the way it goes. Time plus matter plus chance. You had a lot of time, infinite amount of time, and then you had some matter and stuff happens, and then a lot of random things had to come together in a chance kind of way. It'd be kind of like the odds. If you had trillions and trillions of blue marbles in a vast ocean, and your task was to find one time, go in and find a red marble. What do you think? What would your chances be? Trillions and trillions to one. It's impossible. It's impossible. And that is the chance model or the chance theory of the universe existing. The other one is the design model. This is that fine-tuning thing that says when you look at who we are, and by the way, we've not found anything else or in our universe. It's not to say that we won't, but I'm a little skeptical at this point. If it is, it's going to fall in the same parameters here, is that the design, the fine-tuning of the universe best points itself out to the fine-tuner. The fine-tuner. For example, if you went to a manufacturer of pianos And if you ever looked inside, like our grand piano at church, there are all kinds of strings of various lengths and sizes. That's how you get the various sounds, right? But if you just put them in there randomly, it wouldn't work. And also, if you just put them in there and say, okay, they're there, and you went to the piano, it would sound horrible. In order to make them work correctly, you have to have a fine tuner, a piano tuner that knows exactly what they're supposed to sound like. It doesn't take a whole lot of education to say, that sounds horrible, or that sounds like it's supposed to sound. And the reason is that there was a tuner that is a fine tuner that knows precisely what they're supposed to be, what the cycles are, what the frequency is, what it's supposed to sound like. All right, same thing applies to the design of the universe. When you look at the temperature of this world, the atmosphere that we live in, it goes on and on and on and on. The design, things that we have just to survive, implies that there had to be somebody that knew what they were doing. Now, there's two popular arguments against fine-tuning, against this design. There's the anthropic principle. Big word. Anthropic just means, it's from a Greek word meaning human beings. And the anthropic principle states that, well, we shouldn't be surprised in a fine-tuned world and universe because we're alive. And since we're alive, it proves that there is a fine-tuning to our universe. Now, you see how that's kind of a circular argument? We're here, therefore it exists. It would be similar to someone, oops, I just lost my notes again. It did that to me every time I've done this. But it would be similar to a guy who is standing before a firing squad. They got their rifles, he's blindfolded, and they shoot. And after he shoots, everyone, all those 20 men shoot. Nothing happens. Guy's still standing. And he's saying, well, that proves that everyone missed me or everyone loaded blanks in their gun. Really? That doesn't prove anything. What it does prove is that happened on purpose. Wouldn't you agree with me? That happened on purpose. It's not something that just happened by itself, but it happened because the guys that had the guns either purposely missed, because 20 guys wouldn't accidentally miss, nor would, if they had blanks in their guns, someone said, let's put blanks in our guns. So you can't just say, hey, I'm here, therefore that proves fine-tuning. No, that doesn't make any sense. Also, there's one for you all that like Spider-Man in the multiverse, or whatever that's called. I like that movie. I saw it a few months back. A multiverse theory. And we've started this here recently, and the multiverse theory says there is an infinite amount of universes that are dimensional universes that are around us all the time. We simply can't see them. Now, first of all, no one's ever proven that. It's a great thing for sci-fi and movies. I love it. But the problem is, no one has ever shown how and why that could exist. So, that's one problem. Also, here's another problem. Let's say that there are multiverses and there are all kinds of Spider-Mans everywhere. Okay? Let's just say that. Here's the problem. Where did the multiverses come from? See, here's the problem. If you're going to say, well, don't worry about fine-tuning because there's all kinds of multiverses and different kinds of things that are happening, well, fine. Where do they come from? See, it doesn't explain anything. You have a problem with that. You see, where those exceptions to the design theory have problems within themselves. Now, look at one other thing about the design, and that's our DNA. You've probably studied this a little bit in science, and When they first started talking about evolution back with Darwin, they didn't know anything about DNA. Do you realize that there is enough information, scientific information about ourselves in our DNA to fill 8,000 books? That's a lot of stuff. Whenever we see this amount of stuff, this complex, it makes sense to say, how did we get this kind of complexity? Where did it come from? Is there some design in this? For example, if you saw John Loves Mary in the sand on a beach, would you say, well, look what the tide just wrote on the beach? No, you wouldn't say that. Look at what the storm left as the water came down in this pattern. No, you wouldn't say that. What you would say is someone came and wrote John Loves Mary. It's probably John. You've got to find him somewhere. But you understand what I'm saying? It doesn't make sense that it just kind of appeared one day. And that's what DNA says. Even the staunchest atheist has to admit there's no natural explanation for the origin or the information inside of DNA. DNA points to someone, something, some powerful force that is the author of life. Does it prove that God is that author? Of course not. You can't prove that. Because God, being a holy other being, is not going to fall within our physical world. However, we do have something called the Bible, which explains who we are and where we came from and what is our purpose better than anything you can find. What I've told you is you cannot totally 100% define your faith, because if you did, guess what? It wouldn't be faith anymore. But neither is it something that's kind of like a blind man in a dark building saying, I think I know what this looks like. No, you have proofs that make sense, and it makes better sense than anything else that's out there. And our leap of faith is a leap that is informed, that has reason to our faith. 3 powerful arguments for a creator. Science is not against faith when it is done properly. In fact, it confirms it. Remember, science can tell you how we got what's happening to us, but it can never tell us why it's happening and what will happen with our lives. Psalm 8:3-4. I think I used this verse last week. When I look into your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars which you have set in place, what is man that you are mindful of him, the Son of Man that you care for him? When we see our universe, it should move us to ask questions, but those questions should lead us to some answers, and those answers should lead us to our faith, and then we look at our universe and say, oh my, how great you are, God, how small we are, and yet you love us. Well, I hope you look at last week, and you look at this week, and look at them a couple of times. Because I want to tell you, these are some powerful arguments for the reason of the existence of God. And you're going to come against professors, against other students, against friends that are going to say, I don't believe in God. You're going to say, fine, would you be willing to look at some of this material that I have studied and found it to be very helpful? And then share it. Maybe even share these videos with them. It'd be fantastic. So, thank you for listening. Thank you for thinking with me. Thank you for being the people that you are. I'm looking forward in a few weeks to seeing you at church. Until then, next Wednesday night we'll have something else. Don't know what it'll be, but it'll be here for you because you are special. See you then.